Later that week, I had a religious experience at Manolo Blahnik. I need your honest opinion. You can't afford them?
You deserve it. 3 little words we've heard so often. They've become a reflex. After a breakup, you deserve it. A stressful week, you earned it. Feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, or unseen? Girl, go shopping. Over time, buying something became more than just a transaction. It became therapy, a coping mechanism, even an identity. But when did consumption become care? And more importantly, who sold us that idea in the first place? This video isn't about shaming anyone for clicking add to cart after a rough day. We've all been there. It's about asking a deeper question. Why does shopping feel like healing in the first place? Beyond the glossy windows of department stores, the curated shelves at Sephora, and the cozy candle aisles at Target lies something much more complex. For decades, capitalism has targeted women's emotions, turning exhaustion into a market, and branding consumption as empowerment. The result? A generation taught to treat emotional labor with lipsticks and lattes. In this video, we'll explore how emotional spending became gendered, normalized, and even glamorized. We'll look at how the 1950s department stores created an emotional playground for housewives, how pop culture icons like Sex and the City made designer shopping bags feel like trophies, and how TikTok's girl math reveals how deeply we've internalized the connection between spending and self-worth. Because the truth is, shopping was never self-care. It was a symptom of something deeper. Let's unpack how we got here. Chapter 1, When Spending Became Survival, the Emotional Economy of Treat Yourself. Let's begin with something that's often left unsaid. For many women, shopping wasn't just leisure, it was survival. It was one of the only forms of self-expression that didn't require permission. For generations, women had very few safe, socially acceptable ways to assert independence, release stress, or even experience joy without being judged. Their identities were tightly wrapped around domesticity, caregiving, and the quiet performance of emotional labor. In this context, pleasure had to be tidy, rest had to be earned, and indulgent, that had to look like something respectable, like a new dress, a home appliance, or a fresh shade of lipstick. Not too loud, not too bold, just enough to feel a flicker of autonomy. This became especially clear in the post-World War II era. During the war, women had filled the labor gaps, taking on jobs in factories, on farms, and in offices. They contributed to the economy, supported their families, and tasted a form of independence. But when the war ended, they were swiftly ushered back into the home. Patriarchal society praised them as the heart of the family. But in practice, they became unpaid laborers, managing households, raising children, and holding together the emotional threads of their families. Their work was constant, invisible, and emotionally depleting. And yet, they were told to smile, to be grateful, and to have it all. This is where shopping began to take on a deeper meaning. It wasn't just about acquiring goods, it was about reclaiming even the smallest ounce of control. In a life where time, money, and decisions were often dictated by someone else, a husband, a family, a cultural expectation, spending became a quiet rebellion. A new handbag or compact mirror wasn't just a product, it was a moment of self-recognition, a way of saying, I exist. Crucially, shopping was socially sanctioned. Unlike solo travel, creative pursuits, or career ambitions that took women outside their natural roles, browsing department stores or flipping through catalogs was seen as harmless, feminine, safe. It didn't disrupt the system. It worked in perfect harmony with it. By the mid-20th century, department stores had perfected this emotional transaction. These were more than retail spaces. They were carefully curated fantasy worlds, soft lighting, elegant displays, perfume in the air. Every detail was designed to make women feel special. Store clerks greeted them by their name. There were lounge areas, makeup counters, and dressing rooms that felt more like boudoirs than booths. Women weren't just buying, they were being seen. In these dreamlike spaces, far from the screaming toddler or the unwashed dishes at home, they were briefly transported into a version of womanhood that felt glamorous and affirmed. Shopping in this sense offered a rare kind of emotional validation, and because it was tied to consumer spending, it was praised, not questioned. By the 80s and 90s, as malls replaced the department store and credit cards became ubiquitous, the ritual of occasional indulgence became something more systemic. Shopping became an identity, a pastime, a way of relating to the world. Advertising in women's magazines and television began framing consumption as not just pleasurable, but powerful. Treat yourself wasn't just a fun phrase, it became a mantra for a generation of women told they could have it all, as long as they looked good doing it. Buying things was no longer just an option, it was a duty. If you weren't spending, you weren't loving yourself. This is where the messaging began to shift dramatically. Shopping became framed as a kind of modern feminism. Brands leaned into empowerment narratives, suggesting that women weren't just buying lipstick, they were reclaiming agency. A makeover wasn't just about vanity, it was about transformation. A designer bag wasn't materialism, it was self-worth on your shoulder. In this era, capitalism learned to speak the language of self-love. It marketed consumption as emotional healing, and the more exhausted women became, the more the system profited from their search of relief. But this empowerment was never organic. It was engineered, carefully, strategically, and profitably. Emotional spending had transformed from an occasional coping mechanism into a billion-dollar industry. Women already managing the emotional labor of families, relationships, and careers were now expected to manage their exhaustion through beauty products, brunch dates, and shopping hauls. But when these things didn't actually fix the burnout, they were made to feel like they hadn't done self-care correctly. This is the paradox we're still living in. We're burnt out, overwhelmed, emotionally depleted, and the answer we're sold over and over again is to buy something, light a candle, book a facial, add something to your cart. But when the dopamine wears off and the fatigue lingers, we don't question the system, we blame ourselves. We think we didn't treat ourselves enough. So we have to ask, was it ever truly about self-care? Or was shopping simply the most palatable, most profitable form of coping that women were allowed? One that kept them exhausted but pacified, disempowered but distracted, and all the while spending. Chapter 2, The Feminine Fantasy. How 1950s department stores engineered desire. Let's rewind to the 1950s, a decade often romanticized for its fashion, its glossy housewife ideal, and its post-war prosperity. But beneath the pastel kitchens and swing coats was a cultural moment where shopping for women became more than just an errand. It became a performance, and nowhere was this more visible than in the rise of the department store. These weren't just retail spaces, they were immersive environments carefully curated to make women feel glamorous, important, and most crucially at home. Marble floors, chandelier lighting, plush carpeting, fresh flowers, delicate scents wafting from the perfume counters. It was all by design. Every detail in the department store experience was meant to appeal to the specific version of femininity, one that was elegant, aspirational, and above all, consumable. Women were quickly encouraged not to shop quickly, but to linger, to wander through cosmetics, linger at the glove counter, dream in front of the mirrors, in a world where their movements were often limited to home and family. These stores became both sanctuary and stage. But let's be clear, there was nothing neutral about it. These temples of femininity were also tools of cultural conditioning. While they invited women in the promise of luxury, they also reinforced gender norms with every purchase. Advertisements and in-store signage subtly and sometimes blatantly suggested that a good woman cared for her family through what she bought. A sparkling new stove wasn't just an appliance, it was a symbol of her devotion. A wrinkle cream wasn't just a beauty product, it was a promise to remain desirable. Shopping wasn't just encouraged, it was normalized. This is where the brilliance and danger of 1950s consumer marketing comes in. Shopping was positioned as both a duty and a delight. It was your responsibility as a wife and mother to choose the best detergent, the most efficient vacuum, the right curtains, but it was also your reward. That tube of lipstick, a little treat just for you, that silk scarf, a reminder that you were still beautiful and still worthy. The message was clear: be everything to everyone, and when it feels like too much, buy yourself something nice. This dual message, nurturer and beauty, homemaker and seductress, became the cornerstone of gendered advertisements. Women were not just being sold products, they were being sold identities that were deeply entwined with how they looked, how they kept their homes, how they raised their children, and how much they were willing to spend to maintain the illusion of perfection. And it worked. By the late 1950s, women controlled the majority of household spending. Advertisers knew this and began speaking to them directly, but not logically. Emotion became the language of marketing. You weren't just buying a product, you were buying a feeling, a sense of confidence, of belonging, of safety. A lipstick wasn't just a cosmetic, it was a shield against aging, invisibility, or dissatisfaction. A coat wasn't just outerwear, it was status, aspiration, and transformation. And because this emotional messaging worked so well, it never really left. If anything, it just evolved with the times. The promises made more subtle, the imagery more diverse, but the emotional manipulation stayed the same. Today's Instagram ads for skincare, fast fashion hauls, or curated self-care boxes are modern echoes of these same mid-century strategies. Brands are still selling us solutions to feelings: boredom, burnout, heartbreak, insecurity, but wrapping them in a language that feels empowering. What's most insidious about all of this is how normalized it became. So normalized that emotional spending often doesn't feel like manipulation at all. It feels like instinct. It feels like self-care. But when we trace back, we can see the roots. Department store floors designed to make women linger. Ad copy written to validate our exhaustion. Products marketed not just as items, but as identities. That's why I love that show Mad Men too so much. Like when Don Draper's doing his spiels and trying to it's all like this mass manipulation and marketing, trying to convince women that they need this thing, that they'll get the man when they have this, they'll feel better and more worthy. And it's worth asking, have you ever bought something not because you needed it, but because you hoped it would fix how you felt? Because if you have, you're not alone. In fact, you're right where the system hoped you to be. I mean, I've done this so many times. Like if I'm just, if you're having a bad day, it's just very satisfying to buy something small, even like makeup. Sometimes I like to do that, like skincare excites me. And sometimes buying something online, and there's that second wave of adrenaline when it comes in the mail and you open up the package. It's super exciting. So, I get it. Trust me, I'm a victim of all of this. Chapter 3, Shopping for Feelings. How pop culture turned retail into therapy. Let's fast forward to the late 1990s and early 2000s, the heyday of mall culture, glossy magazines, and the rise of television heroines who defined femininity for a generation. This was a time when retail therapy stopped being just a clever slogan and started becoming a fully realized cultural narrative, one that would forever link consumerism to female emotion. Enter Carrie Bradshaw, the undisputed queen of consumer feminism. In Sex and the City, shopping wasn't just a hobby. It was practically a form of communication. Carrie didn't just buy shoes. She felt her way through them. She didn't need a stable financial plan because her closet was her portfolio. She famously quipped, "I like my money where I can see it, hanging in my closet." And the show never framed this as a problem. Her chronic spending wasn't a sign of avoidance or financial instability. It was a sign of her charm, her vulnerability, her quirky, lovable chaos. Impulse shopping in this universe was painted as an authentic expression of femininity, creative, spontaneous, and completely normal. And I will say, I do love that show. I've watched it over a few times. I think in like 2020 or 2021, I rewatched the whole thing and all the movies again, and it just makes me happy. And I started just watching just like that. I can't believe I didn't watch it when it came out. I'm starting to get into it. But Sex and the City was just the beginning. Around the same time, rom-coms were reinforcing the same message with sparkling consistency. In Clueless, Cher overcomes a heartbreak with a trip to the mall. In Legally Blonde, Elwood prepares to reinvent herself, not with therapy or introspection, but with a makeover. Confessions of a Shopaholic took it a step further, building the entire plot around a woman whose emotional highs and lows were directly tied to her credit card statements. These weren't cautionary tales, they were aspirational. The protagonists were charming, relatable, and just like us. The message was clear. Shopping didn't make them shallow. It made them modern women navigating complicated emotional terrain in style. Retail therapy in these stories became a kind of emotional shorthand. It was a scene you could count on, usually set to an upbeat soundtrack, often in slow motion, always accompanied by a montage of bright bags and glossy smiles. It was a moment in the movie when the heroine takes back control, not by confronting her inner wounds, but by swiping her card. Shopping became the cinematic stand-in for personal growth. Heartbreak? Buy a new dress. Career setback? Get a facial. Need to feel seen? Head to the department store. And it worked, on screen and off. Young women watching these characters absorbed the idea that spending was not only an acceptable way to cope, but a smart one. It was provocative, it was stylish, it was fun. The real magic of this era was consumerism was reframed from a passive activity into empowered choice. This wasn't about being sold to, it was about self-expression, identity, even feminism. Buying a designer bag wasn't indulgent, it was self-love. Applying a sheet mask wasn't vain, it was healing. The mall became a modern-day sanctuary, a space where women could bond, vent, and cry, and celebrate all while consuming. But here's the problem. Shopping is easy, healing is not. Real emotional work requires time, introspection, sometimes confrontation. It's rarely fun, and it's definitely not glamorous. But in the world of early 2000s pop culture, healing was stylized into something that could fit inside a shopping montage. And that created a dangerous illusion that consumption could replace emotional processing. The stakes of this illusion are higher than they seem. Because when the dress doesn't fix the heartbreak, when the glow up doesn't change how empty you feel, when the bags get heavier but the sadness stays, the woman is left thinking she did something wrong. Maybe she didn't spend enough. Maybe she bought the wrong shade. Maybe she just needs another haul. But the real issue isn't her. It's the system that taught her to equate emotional recovery with retail satisfaction. Brands saw this cultural shift and ran with it. Emotional branding became the holy grail of marketing. Instead of selling products, they began selling transformation. The language of self-worth was co-opted to sell mascara. Slogans like "because you're worth it" didn't just target your wallet. They targeted your insecurities, your fatigue, your longing to feel seen. Products were sold as promises, and pop culture had already done the work of making us believe those promises could be kept. This legacy still lingers today. Even now, in the age of mindfulness and mental health awareness, the reflex to shop when you're feeling low is deeply embedded. Why journal when you can order something cute and feel better instantly? Why sit with uncomfortable feelings when you can scroll through Zara? The myth persists because it's comforting. It's quick. It's seductive. But we have to ask, what happens when shopping is mistaken for healing? And pain doesn't actually go away. Because when retail becomes therapy and the purchases don't deliver peace, we don't just lose money, we lose a bit of ourselves in the process. And that's something no designer bag can ever give back. Chapter 4. Girl math, meme logic, and the new language of emotional spending. Welcome to TikTok, the digital confession booth of a generation. It's where therapy is shared in 15-second clips, where burnout is aestheticized, and where one of the most revealing financial trends of recent years has gone viral under cheeky label girl math. At first glance, girl math seems innocent, funny. It's a satirical way of rationalizing everyday spending with twisted, almost nonsensical logic. If you pay in cash, it's free because the money already left your account. If you return a $100 item and then buy something else for $100, that second purchase, free. If your coffee cost $7 but saved your sanity during a chaotic morning, it was an investment, emotional return on investment. It's all part of a joke, playful, exaggerated, and coded in self-awareness. But like many viral TikTok trends, there's more happening beneath the surface. What makes girl math so compelling and quietly alarming is how it reflects a deeper truth about emotional spending. We're not just justifying purchases with flawed math, we're justifying them with emotional exhaustion. The subtext is loud and clear. I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed, I've been giving everything to everyone else all day, and I deserve this little joy. Whether it was a latte, a lipstick, and a last-minute Zara order, girl math gives us socially acceptable script for saying, I just need something for me. And this behavior didn't start with TikTok, it simply evolved. The logic of girl math is the same logic Carrie Bradshaw used to rationalize buying shoes instead of paying rent. It's the same thinking rom-com heroines employed when they cured their heartbreaks with shopping montages. What TikTok has done is wrap this legacy into meme culture. The hashtags are new, the editing is snappier, but the core message hasn't changed. When life gets overwhelming, spending is the quickest way to feel like you're back in control, even if for only a moment. And let's be honest, women are still living in a system that demands far too much. We're expected to juggle careers, caregiving, friendships, relationships, household labor, and somehow also maintain flawless skin, perfectly curated closets, and charming Instagram feeds. We're not just working 9 to 5s, we're performing around the clock. No wonder girl math feels so relatable. It's not just that spending itself is inherently harmful, it's that we've been conditioned to believe it's the only kind of relief we're allowed. Because what's the alternative? Therapy is expensive, rest is demonized, saying no is labeled selfish, but buying something that's fast, it's affirming. It doesn't require confirmation or reflection. You don't have to unpack your trauma or negotiate your boundaries. You just check out and wait for the dopamine hit to arrive in a pretty package. And even if that feeling doesn't last, even if the anxiety creeps back in before the tags come off, at least you have a moment of reprieve. And it's true, there's been times where I'll buy something, I'll get that adrenaline rush when it comes in the mail, open it up, and then I end up returning it because I have this like remorse and guilt, but I still got that thrill of opening it. And the thing is, girl math isn't really about numbers. It's about emotional calculus. It's about women learning how to justify caring for themselves in a society that rarely does. It's about making peace with a desire for small joys in a world that constantly demands our labor, but it offers little in return. And yes, we laugh about it. We make jokes about buying $30 candles and calling it healing. But what we're really doing is collectively coping, often in plain sight. And brands are watching. Always. Every time a girl math video goes viral, you can bet a marketing team is figuring out how to turn that relatability into revenue. They know we're exhausted. They know we're lonely, anxious, and burned out. And they're ready to meet us where we are with carefully worded product descriptions that promise confidence, clarity, with curated TikTok ads that sound like inside jokes but are really just finely tuned emotional targeting. Because emotional vulnerability is profitable, especially when it's wrapped in humor. This is why girl math resonates so widely. It lets us name the absurdity without dismantling it. It lets us laugh while still participating, but it also raises a critical question. Are we laughing at ourselves, or are we laughing through the pain? Because the line between satire and self-preservation is thin, and sometimes what looks like a silly financial meme is actually a lifeline for women just trying to stay afloat in a world that constantly asks for more. Chapter 5, The Truth They Won't Sell You. Why real self-care doesn't come in a shopping bag. Here's the truth we rarely say out loud. Maybe because it's uncomfortable, or maybe because it's not nearly as fun. Real self-care isn't glamorous. It's not packaged in pastel branding. It doesn't come with a free gift with purchase. It doesn't show up on your doorstep wrapped in tissue paper and tied with a bow. And most importantly, it doesn't come with a price tag. Real self-care is often messy. It's hard. It's uncomfortable. It's quiet. Unaesthetic work of drawing boundaries, saying no, logging off, and making peace with being enough even when you're not producing, performing, or perfecting. It's going to bed early instead of doom scrolling through late night sale alerts. It's confronting the emotional triggers that make you want to click add to cart. It's choosing to rest without guilt in a world that only values women when they're useful or beautiful, or ideally both. But here's where it gets tricky. Real self-care doesn't sell. It doesn't create repeat customers. It doesn't boost quarterly profits. And so the market had to create a version of self-care that could be monetized. And that's how we got the version we see today. The one that's curated, clickable, and shareable. The one that tells you a $60 serum is emotional regulation, that a new yoga outfit is alignment, that a $14 candle is inner peace in a jar. And yes, buying yourself flowers, treating yourself to a really good latte, or splurging on something that genuinely brings you joy can be a form of care. This isn't about vilifying pleasure or rejecting consumerism altogether. Women deserve beautiful things. Women deserve softness, luxury, indulgence. But the critical difference lies in why we're doing it. Are we treating ourselves because we want to celebrate, or because we feel so depleted that a purchase feels like the only way to keep going? There's a difference between conscious joy and emotional outsourcing. And for so many women, especially in a society that constantly under-resources them emotionally, financially and socially, shopping became the only tool they were handed. Not because it was the best tool, but because it was the most profitable one. Capitalism thrives when they're too tired to question it. When we're emotionally drained, financially anxious, and socially isolated, we're easier to market to. We crave control, relief, and affirmation, and brands are happy to provide them for a price. But the moment we start asking the deeper questions, the moment we pause for a purchase and ask, what am I actually feeling right now? The entire illusion begins to crack. Because when you start noticing the emotional marketing, the targeted ads and subtle shaming and the manipulative empowerment language, it becomes harder to ignore the truth. Shopping was never meant to heal you. It was meant to pacify you. And that's why unlearning the system is so difficult. It's not just about habits, it's about identity. When we've been taught to express self-worth through what we wear, what we buy, how our spaces look, how effortlessly we glow up, and stepping away from the narrative can feel like stepping into a void. If self-care isn't something I can buy, what is? The answer is beautifully simple and impossibly complex. Real self-care is built, not bought. It's built through rest, through therapy, if you have access, through real friendships, intentional solitude, journaling, breathwork, walking outside. It's built through saying, I'm tired without apologizing, through letting your body be soft instead of squeezed into shapewear. It's built by understanding that you don't have to earn your own kindness with productivity or prettiness. And of course, none of this means that shopping is evil. It's a tool, sometimes a joyful one, sometimes a deeply confronting one, but it's just that, a tool. And tools, when misused, can hurt more than help. So here's the question we should be asking ourselves, quietly, honestly, and without shame. What would self-care look like if no one was trying to sell it to you? Would it be like going off the grid for a weekend and calling your best friend instead of checking your wish list? Wearing the same outfit 3 days in a row because it's soft and feels like home? Would it look like doing nothing at all and knowing that's enough? Because that's the thing no brand will ever tell you. You're already enough. Even without the cart full of beauty products, even without the $200 skincare routine, even without the dopamine rush of a package arriving at your door. The most radical form of self-care in a capitalist world might just be not buying anything at all. Let's take a breath and look at the story we've just unpacked, from the post-war housewife quietly wandering a department store aisle to Carrie Bradshaw romanticizing her financial chaos with designer shoes, to the TikTok's girl math turning emotional burnout into punchline. Emotional spending was never just a quirky habit. It was cultural, it was systemic, and it was designed. We were taught to treat shopping like therapy, not because it truly heals, but because it pacifies. It keeps us quiet, manageable, and feminine. It turns our exhaustion into a market and our coping into content. And when it doesn't work, when the sadness lingers, or the burnout creeps back in, we blame ourselves. We think we didn't self-care hard enough, spend smart enough, glow up fast enough, but the truth is we were never broken. We were just sold a solution to a problem the system never intended to fix. That realization isn't just sobering, it's empowering, because the moment we stop confusing consumption with care, we start to build something more honest, more nourishing, and real. Real self-care is rarely glamorous. It's not Instagrammable. It's not trending. It looks like saying no, logging off, feeling your feelings instead of covering them up with product. It's rest, community therapy if you have access, and boundaries that hold even when they're not convenient. And yes, buying something pretty can be a part of it, but the difference is knowing why. Are you shopping from joy, or from depletion. Because when you start asking those questions, what do I really need? Where does it actually hurt? You start reclaiming something that capitalism can't monetize, your own intuition, your own inner knowing. Shopping isn't evil. It can be fun and creative at sometimes, but it's a tool, not a cure, not a therapist, not a stand-in for care you never received. So the next time you reach for your wallet after a long day, just pause. Ask yourself, is this what I truly need, or is it what I've been taught to reach for? You might still buy the thing, but this time you'll know why. And that awareness, that tiny shift in intention, is where the real healing begins. So thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments below, like, what are your thoughts? Do you do retail therapy splurges? I mean, I'm guilty of all of that. I mean, it's very satisfying to buy something and there's that moment of excitement. So let me in the comments below. I'm really curious your thoughts on all this. All right, thanks for watching.